Welcome to the Quantum Guide Show, where you will find interesting guests and discussions about cutting-edge topics to assist you on your journey. The Quantum Guide Show is ideally suited to the newly awakened and for those who feel isolated by their newfound beliefs. The mind, body, and spirit thrive when we have a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change that we wish to see in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels, and share this show with your friends. Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today in episode 89, I am pleased to bring back our returning guest, Aurora Seraphine. Aurora is the founder of Divine Alchemy Temple Arts, a spiritual healing arts practice offering numerous ways to heal and grow, both in person and remotely. She is an integrative holistic healing practitioner, unifying many modalities and sacred traditions. With a lifelong sensitivity to energy and the other realms, Aurora naturally gravitated to the healing arts. In 2007, she co-founded a healing, training, and event center for subtle energy practices and paradigm-busting gatherings. She is an essential oil alchemist, massage and body worker, intuitive healer, and advanced energy worker. Aurora is also a hypnotist, conscious musician, deep trance sound healer, and vocal alchemist. In 2013, she developed a sound healing technique called sonoluminous divine entrainment, designed to support people in accessing specific brainwave states through frequency and guiding them to source-generated healing by creating new neural pathways. Aurora is also a writer, speaker, mama of two, and an advocate for the organic, high-vibe living and spirit-directed pregnancy and birth. She is an avid researcher of ancient texts and traditions and loves bridging the worlds of science and spirituality through the quantum. It is Aurora's commitment to align with the inner divine to support herself and others in becoming the most tuned in, radiant version of themselves, awakened to the reality of heaven on earth. Aurora, welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Karen. I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm just getting over a cold. I probably sound a little bit stuffy, and I might need to mute if I have a little coughing spell. But besides that, I'm doing quite well. It didn't last long. And I think that's one of the real benefits of a healthy lifestyle or a high vibe lifestyle is that we don't get sick. I haven't had a cold in 5 years, and this is the first one. And it basically lasted for 3 days, with today being the kind of final cleanup. I've got my tea here. I've got some my old standby is lemon balm, passion flower, and chamomile. And together they're very antiviral, antibacterial. They help us to relax. And so that is my old standby for getting better quicker. Anyway, so Aurora, what is new with you? What are you working on? And what kind of message do you have for our audience today?
Yes. Well, I've been working recently on developing a sound healing course. So that's something that I'll be launching in the near future. More will be announced on that soon that you'll be able to find on my website, which is divinealchemytemplearts.com. Nothing is up on it yet. I'm still getting everything sorted out with that. But that will be, announced probably in the next couple of weeks. But today, I would love to cover the topic of the organic high vibe living and
Yes.
and nutrition. So that's what I would really love to dive into. It's been a huge part of my life. I know, in my younger years, growing up, our household was always, we were always eating foods that other kids hadn't heard of. And, so I kind of felt like an oddity, but I come to realize later on, like, oh, we were eating fairly healthy, although healthy is relative to each person and each perspective, because, there's a lot that you can learn about nutrition, about food, and its service to the body. But something that I'll say that really was kind of like a major pivotal point for me on the topic of nutrition is it really coincided with my awakening. And so when I started, and again, in other episodes, I've talked about that I have been kind of attuned to the subtle realms, meaning that I've been an experiencer, I've been a contactee, having experiences, paranormal types of experiences since I was a very young child. And, having past life memories come to me at a very early age, all kinds of stuff like that, that other kids my age were not experiencing, that I was talking to, right? That were in my life. But how that kind of tied in. So later on, when I refer to my awakening, it was kind of like the culmination of starting to recognize what was really going on, and become consciously aware of that, and begin to experience more mastery of that heart-brain coherence, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was at that time that, and my awakening probably started before I turned 20. So between 16 and 20 years old, I was kind of getting cracked open in a more like, okay, Aurora, it's time to pay attention, kind of way. So at that time, when I was going through all of that, I started learning more and more, and really just like diving in headfirst to everything that I knew that was within my control that I could do to optimize my experience of awakening, to optimize the function of the glands in your body, because that's something that a lot of people don't really talk about. People talk about the pineal gland, but they don't talk as much about like the pituitary, or your adrenal glands, or your thymus, or thyroid, or people don't go into all of that. And those are a crucial connection to the energetic body, and to our energy centers, or our chakras, that a lot of people are familiar with. So that was kind of why I really was full on committed, not just because I wanted to be healthy and I didn't want to get sick, because who wants that, but it was like, how can I do everything that I can do to really turn up the volume on my abilities, on my experiences, and experience energy and chi in the most vibrant way possible. So that was really what kind of catapulted me into the field of nutrition. So I'm going to give you today a bit of a twofold perspective, because there's a lot that I've learned over the years in terms of nutrition that is very informational. And there's also a lot that I've learned over the years in terms of, again, going back to that heart-brain connection, the energy body connection, and how we interpret all of those things, and then how they then serve us or are a disservice to us based on our thoughts. So please keep that in mind. And again, just as a disclaimer, I'm not a medical doctor. These are just things that I have passionately researched for 3/4 of my life. So please do your own research. And please, don't make any major life-changing, life-altering decisions without consulting who you have in your life, medical practitioner or holistic practitioner, whoever is your go-to person in that field. Please consult them before making any life-altering, or even dietary shifts if that's something that's desirous to you. But having said that, this is kind of my path and how I've gone about it. So during that time in my awakening, I really, I think the first thing that I did was I shifted from a more conventional approach, because the thing is that when I was a kid, it wasn't even really a discussed topic of like organic food versus conventional food. People did it. That wasn't even like a thing that I'd even heard of when I was a kid. So coming of age and realizing that there was a major separation, there's a major discrepancy between the two, and that it's something that needs to be looked at is kind of a big deal. Because for someone to say this is conventional food, and really what's that definition? Well, that means that you're most likely getting a big dose of glyphosate, which, if you don't know anything about glyphosate, please do some research. There are different names for it, like Roundup, and there's different types of those things, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, different things like that are perpetually sprayed on food crops that are well-known carcinogens, cancer-causing agents. They're well-known neurotoxins, and anything that's a neurotoxin is going to be an endocrine disruptor, which starts to imbalance the hormones and the hormonal functions within the body. Well, once those things are out of balance, you have a whole cascade of events that can start to happen in the body, which can lead to all kinds of dis-ease or dysfunction, or really disharmony is what we're looking at. And so I also want to bring to everybody's attention too that when I'm talking about disharmony, some of these things can relate to environmental causes. And today, we do live in an environment where we're, most of the time, unless we're completely immersed in nature somewhere, we're exposed to some amount of environmental toxin, whether it's EMFs, whether, there's, if people have Wi-Fi, that the whole electrosmog kind of thing happening. The glyphosate, like we're talking about, having those kinds of pesticides and things on the food supply, or even aerosols, commonly known as chemtrails, but that kind of has been written off as a conspiracy theory by a lot of people. But now, if you look up the proper terminology, like aerosol spraying, and I think I think there's like a couple other things that they're known to go by. That's the more like proper terminology, I would say. That kind of stuff, when that is in the atmosphere, obviously it affects air quality, and then it affects the water quality, right? Because it's getting into the rain, and that it affects the soil quality. And so, we won't go into the climate change conversation here, but that has a big impact on that as well. So we'll leave that for another topic, another time. But so there's all kinds of environmental pollutants that we're constantly dealing with from day to day. Now, each and every one of us is going to experience those in different ways. And it, for me, from my experience, it really all depends on where your mind is at, where your body's at, and what kind of food you're giving yourself. And I don't just mean physical food, but the fact that we live in this beautiful holographic universe, and that there's always this feedback loop that's happening between us and our environment. And so when we participate in that feedback loop, we add to the field, to the quantum field. through our thoughts, our emotions, all of those things. And I know we're talking about nutrition, but this definitely plays into all of that.
Mhm.
And then, what we're exposing ourselves to, even emotionally, works, sometimes to our advantage or again, maybe a disservice to us, depending on the type of emotion that we're surrounding ourselves with. So to become very conscious of the environments that we're putting ourselves in is so valuable, not so that you become like a shell of a person who's afraid to go outside. That's not what I mean at all, but just to be mindful and then to really start working on fortifying from the inside out. And nutrition is one of the ways that you can do that. And that's what we're talking about today.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
For the viewers, I know the difference, but a lot of the viewers don't really understand the difference between organic and mainstream food. And like my mom used to always say, oh, don't buy organic. It's too expensive. All you have to do is wash it really good, or all you have to do is peel it. Well, I had no idea that it meant so many other things, like the way the land is treated. And I'm not going to go on about it, but I'm wondering if you could explain to the viewers what the difference is between organic and non-organic. Is it worth the extra price? Is it really better for you? And what's the drawback of the conventional or the mainstream type foods that are chemical laden?
Yeah, so that's a really big question. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not a scientist, so I may not give you the most intricate, detailed answer. But what I will say is that the biggest difference, in my humble opinion, is energetic. Everything is frequency. And so if you think about that, everything is impacted by its quality of how it's interacted with, like we were talking about with that feedback loop. And so if people are interacting with their food in a way that is disrespectful, that is, all of these things are happening in bulk, there's no sacredness involved in the food whatsoever. This is just from a kind of my spiritual perspective. Then the intention that should be going into the food, which is love, which is health, which is healing, which is vitality, all of these things, to create a robust, fortified body, mind, spirit, energy body, all of these things, it's not going into the food. So secondly, when you're working with conventional foods, it's not a matter of things being sprayed on the outside of the plants. The things get sprayed before things are ever planted. And just to kind of back that up even a step further, when people are talking about genetically modified crops, you're also dealing with seeds that have had the DNA altered. And a good percentage of the time, the DNA of the plant itself is spliced with animal DNA and, totally random other things that are synthesized that our bodies do not have receptor sites for. So this is something that's really important to consider when you're talking about anything that you are physically imbibing, anything that you are putting into your body, anything you're drinking. Your body has these beautiful, perfect, fractalized looking receptor sites, and they are built specifically for different alkaloids, different proteins, different, like your water even, different herbal medicines. Our bodies are built with these little receptor sites, even DMT, for example. I mean, that's another thing, but so many different things that our bodies are equipped to receive the natural medicine. And so, when you are dealing with processed foods, when you're dealing with genetically modified organisms, they're no longer recognized within the body as food at all. The body doesn't even see it as actual food to fit into those receptor sites because it's been synthesized. It's no longer recognized. So our body goes into rejection mode. And this is one of the first steps in the body creating inflammation. So, and inflammation happens for a variety of reasons, mostly stress. So that's another, again, a whole other conversation, big rabbit hole. Would love to talk about that sometime. But in relationship to food, you want your food to be as whole and as perfect as possible. And if you think of what it's like when you're feeding an animal, you would want to feed that animal with the food that it would eat in its own natural habitat and environment, right? So if whatever, you find a wild animal and you start giving it Cheetos or, it's not going to work. In fact, it's probably going to make that animal very sick. Well, unfortunately, this is sort of an epidemic of what humanity is dealing with on that level as well. But the biggest problem is that there's never been education that's readily accessible for each and every person. This should be something that is discussed in all school systems, curriculums, whatever. And this is why so many people nowadays are pulling out of mainstream, education, because it's not even something that is being covered. I mean, among many other varied topics, again, another conversation. But so the farther removed that it is from its whole perfected state, the harder it is for the body to actually recognize it or assimilate anything. And then you've got a myriad of toxins within the body that the body begins to become inflamed, because the inflammation response, it is a healing mechanism. And I love Andreas Moritz, amazing man. He wrote the book, The Amazing Liver and Gallbladder Flush, I believe is the title. I love all of his protocols and his wisdom. He talks about that the body's response when things show up in the body that are like illness or dis-ease is, he calls them healing mechanisms. And I love that, because the body's natural state is healing. The body doesn't want to be sick. It's not natural for the body to be ill. So inflammation is the body's response to sort of go, I'm going to kind of take a cover of this area. I'm going to hunt things down that need to be resolved. I'm going to heat it up. I'm going to do the work that needs to be done to create healing from the inside out. So that's really important to do. But if you're in a constant state of inflammation, you're having probably a myriad of symptoms that end up cascading through the body, including, that could end up in your, as brain inflammation or brain fog, or, how many people today experience what they call fibromyalgia, things like that are like, pain within the body that's really unidentified, or even autoimmune issues. And many of those, and I'm talking like the whole, a very large laundry list of different conditions like that are oftentimes linked to not putting the right nutrition or the right soul food into your body, or also letting your mind get away from you. And the other thing that you were mentioning in the beginning of the question there is that, when you're spraying the food, it's getting into the soil, it's getting into the water table. And what do you think are all the components of what that food is then grown into and made up of? All the components within that soil. So no, washing your vegetables or taking the peels off of them is not sufficient enough. That fruit or vegetable is then comprised of those chemicals. And again, major disservice, because like I said, these chemicals are known carcinogens. They're known neurotoxins. And so for those of you that don't understand, a neurotoxin, essentially it disrupts the conversation that's happening within the brain, so that there is no brain heart coherence, there is no brain body coherence. And so your whole nervous system can be impacted, your whole endocrine system can be impacted. And, and to the degree where you can then start to experience organ failure and things like that. And we don't want to go down that road. So just to prevent all of that, give ourselves living life force. And so, I guess one of the biggest messages is really just, if there's any one thing that you change, it's not necessarily all about elimination, right? A lot of people think, oh, I have to get rid of all of these things. And look, I'll be honest, like I've been down that road, and to the degree where I was only eating a handful of foods. And, the more that you learn about nutrition, the more that you learn about foods, there's always going to be a pro and a con to everything, even the things that are considered healthy foods. But it's important to remember that if you are integrating them together, many of them need, that symbiotic relationship of marrying multiple types of foods or fruits or vegetables to actually create assimilation within the body. Because like vitamins, for example, you can take a whole slew of different vitamins, but you're not going to experience a healthy level of absorption and assimilation if you're not taking the right kind of fat, because that's crucial to absorb all of those vitamins and minerals. So I forget where I was going with that, but
could I interject for a second while you gather your thoughts?
Yes, please.
I wanted to say, one of the big things that happened for me, and again, much like you, my spiritual awakening went hand in hand with having to completely change my diet. And so it was like I became allergic to everything, and there was almost nothing I could eat for a while. And it's been a slow process of changing my habits and the way I eat. But I want to say something about wheat and grains, which they and on a spiritual level, what they do is they spray just before harvest, they spray extra amount of that glyphosate. I'm sorry, I would probably be pronouncing it wrong. And they spray that. And what happens is the wheat or the barley or the oats, they think they're going to die. And in nature's last ditch attempt to survive and go to seed, it mass produces the heads of wheat or oats or whatever, and then it's harvested. So now it weighs more. So the people that are selling it, they get more money from it because it weighs more, and they get a higher yield. But it's extremely toxic, and the poor plants. Basically, what a horrible thing to do to your food, and so that gets in. But like you said, also the GMO factor. And in Canada, they do not have to declare GMO on anything. And so companies will declare non-GMO if they want to, but there's nothing, it's all completely hidden. So I wanted to say that even when I go into a grocery store, I have to stay away from the bakery aisles and the bread aisles. It makes me sick. Because my body, once we clean up our bodies guide us as to what we need, what we don't need. It actually makes me physically sick. The other thing I wanted to say is about commercial tomatoes. They've GMO'd pig with the tomato, and so they'd have the tougher skins so that they survive the long transport to wherever they're going to be consumed. A lot of people have trouble with the skins because they're so thick. And that's why. So all of this is being done. And if people aren't aware of it, oh my gosh, where's there room for self-defense? Where's there room for self-care? And a lot of people don't know about it. And so that's one of the beautiful things I like about my conversations with you, Aurora, is we really delve into this stuff and tell people the truth. about food and how fundamentally important it is. And I also agree, every organics nut or seed or fruit or vegetable is a prepackaged delivery system that your body's waiting for. And if we don't get it, how are we supposed to have the building blocks to even survive or build up our body? So I guess from this, I want to ask you a question, and that is about food labels. I have found food labels lie. So for instance, people are all going gluten-free, and it's crap. It's refined starch that is way worse for you than if you had organically grown wheat and bread.
Yes.
There's so many things that are so toxic. So many labels include in the ingredients list cane sugar, but they say it's zero carb. How can that be? And they lie. So I'm wondering if you want to also address that, because I know for me, I started out by really relying on labels, and then I graduated to food that didn't have labels. So I'm wondering if you want to talk a bit about that. I hope I'm not taking you off track too much.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah. So to address your question, for those of us that have been doing this a long time, you kind of learn to stick with the foods that are not even packaged. Exactly. And that's honestly, that's my punchline. Okay. But to kind of go back and address what you're asking about specifically, it is difficult. It is difficult to find companies anymore that are going to be forthcoming and honest, because there's just so many side roads that they can take now because there aren't regulations. And so here in the States where I am, they had GMO laws that things had to be labeled, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe that those are actually being lifted to where they don't even have to label that now.
Yeah.
So, and that's a real issue. That is definitely an issue. But the thing is that if you do go for something that is organic cannot be genetically modified. So you know that if you're choosing organic, you know that you're good to go. However, what I will say about that also is that there are still some companies that that even the FDA will approve certain pesticides, herbicides, fungicides to be sprayed on the crops, even if they're organic. So just because you're getting organic food does not always mean that you're out of the woods. However, we just do the best that we can, be as mindful as you can. And yes, still, like, if you're getting it from the grocery store, still try to wash your produce anyway, just for that reason. But because like these regulations are being lifted and people just don't want to be seen and they want to cut corners and they want to be as cost effective as possible, people have labels in their ingredients list, like they're changing the names of certain ingredients that people know are toxic, like aspartame has changed. People have changed the name of aspartame. So now that everyone knows that aspartame is toxic, now they've changed the name to something else. And forgive me, but I don't remember what it is right now. But look that up, because you want to be aware if you are eating food occasionally that is packaged. You want to know what these things are, what maltodextrin is, what all of these refined starches and sugars are. And to stay away from those things as much as possible is really going to benefit you more than indulging in that stuff just because it has an organic label. Because there are foods that, people will say, well, if I just switch everything over to organic, then I'll be healthy. Well, you're going to be healthier, but just because it's organic does not always mean that it's healthy food. And Karen, like you said, it is really important to start learning how to really tune in with our body vehicles. And, even if you guys are familiar with muscle testing, look into that. That's a really interesting way to see if something resonates with your biology, right? To see if it resonates with your energy field. I think people can also use the pendulum. Sure. I've used the pendulum as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Just want to throw that in there. Absolutely. No, that's great. And I did think of what it was, the train of thought that I was on before. And I was talking about not necessarily having to cut back everything in terms of elimination diets and things like that. Although sometimes that can be helpful just to dial our body back in. And even, fasting is something I want to circle back around to if we have time for that as well.
Yes.
But what I was going to say with that is that, if there's one thing that I could share with the audience that is really going to just bring more benefit than anything else, is just to flood your body with whole foods. Flood your body with ideally living foods. You want to get as much living fruits and vegetables as possible in your body. And some people, depending on your constitution, people talk about even in Ayurveda and many different, Chinese medicine and different traditions like that, people will talk about that some people's constitutions are not built for as much raw food, and that's okay. Steam your vegetables, if you need to do that. But still try to get some amount of raw in through juicing or whatever works for you, because the more that you can flood your body with that nutrition, not only is the nutrition benefiting you, but the electricity within the food. That's a huge topic that not many people talk about.
Yes, absolutely. I did a juice fast for, I think 34 days, where I had fruit juices in the morning and I had vegetable juice at night. And you know what I noticed? Well, the first couple of weeks were rough because I had to detox so much from a medical surgical procedure that almost ended my life. But won't talk about that today. But what happened was, after about 3 weeks, I was able to see things that I normally couldn't see. I noticed, like, for instance, waves on the beach. They had a different kind of sparkliness to them that I never saw before. Everything improved. And I was really aware, and this is going to sound gross, but basically I was drinking the blood of fruits and vegetables. And oh my goodness, it made such a huge difference in my perceptual arena, as well as how I felt. Sorry, I didn't mean to take it away. I just wanted to throw that in there.
No, I love your contributions. And I think that it's so valuable to have that perspective, to have that firsthand experience, because you don't realize how out of center or out of balance our bodies are until you actually start integrating more of this and more of this awareness in your life, and then see what a huge difference it makes. Like, colors are more vibrant. My hearing has improved. My sense of smell, my sense of taste has improved. I'm not, as a kid, as healthy as we ate, we still, we had baked goods, and we would still buy store-bought packaged food, and we still were like on the sugar train. And, I don't use sugar today at all. I don't use it.
Me neither.
Because, one, it's overwhelming to my system, but once you start cleansing your body's like, what the heck is this stuff? Like, I don't want it. I don't need it. And your sense of taste is so dramatically improved that when you taste things that are overbearingly sweet, it's like you can feel it. It's just like way more than your body can handle.
Oh, it turns you right off. And so the things we used to be addicted to, we just don't have any desire for anymore. For me, that also included alcohol. When you boil alcohol down with, refined carbs and sugars, it's all basically the same thing. My body doesn't do well on it. My body's like a diesel engine. It wants to run off of really good quality, natural, non-processed fat. That's where I would say I get the bulk of my calories from. And that, in turn, is something that helps my body to assimilate the vitamins and the minerals and other things. There's a hell of a lot more to food than vitamins and minerals that nobody talks about, that are our medicine, that actually heal the body, the mind, and the soul, and support the electrical system. And sorry, I don't even know where I was going with this. But I just wanted to throw that in as well. Food is a magical playground. And when you get to
Yeah.
the point where you can grow a few of your own vegetables in the backyard or on your patio or on your balcony, if you don't have a patio, and you start to have this relationship with the food as we're tending to it. I talk to my plants. I'm a crazy old lady. The body thrives when it has a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change we wish to see in the world. Sometimes, though, we need a little help from consultation and support services. Have you discovered that this world is not what you thought it was? Have recent global events awakened you and leave you feeling unsettled? Do you feel isolated with your not so popular newfound beliefs? Would you like to learn to thrive in this new state of awareness? It is a big shock to wake up and find that the old familiar world is gone, and it can be disturbing to go down the various rabbit holes only to find that the information is difficult to digest, and few people are willing to talk openly about it. You are not a conspiracy theorist. You are awakening, and once you find your way through it, there are many blessings on the other side. My name is Karen Holton, and I offer vital services that may be just what you need, and support for your journey into the weird and wonderful. Check out my Awakening Support and Ascension consultation, created to support individuals with their chosen alternative realities and lifestyles, health and recovery, and spiritual adventures. For more details, check out the various vital services found on my website, and be assured that I have found personal success with every category featured. My website is www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com. I talk to my plants. I tell them how much I love them. There's an exchange of DNA when we're touching and handling them. It's so freaking magical. But people don't know, and they don't have the energy to find out because they're sick and they're tired from the mainstream, food propaganda.
Absolutely. I love that. And no, I don't think you're a crazy old lady. I think that it's amazing. I think it's totally amazing. And it makes me think of the Ringing Cedar series. Have you heard of that?
No.
Okay,
well, maybe I haven't. I don't recall. Sorry.
So for those of you interested, there's an amazing series of books. I won't get into the entire thing here because I want to stay on target, but
okay.
The Ringing Cedar series, it's based on a story about a woman named Anastasia. And she basically goes through and is like talking about the different teachings and the attunements that occur. And she's living in the middle of Siberia. So anyway, it's really fascinating. But she talks about that, taking like the seeds of the plants that you're going to grow and to place them underneath your tongue so that they have that opportunity to actually receive your DNA. And that when that happens, there's an exchange that happens with the seed that it can then encode itself to sort of predict what your body then needs. So that as it's growing, it's giving you what you may be deficient in. And so talking to your plants, and it's totally not crazy. There's scientific research to back up, talking to your plants and the emotion that you're giving them, like you said, love and gratitude. Dr. Emoto, I'm sure you know this already.
Oh, yes.
So for the viewers, Dr. Emoto was a scientist, a Japanese scientist that did experiments with water, and that basically he used different words and different emotions in different situations, music, many different things that he used as experiments to basically create an imprint within the water to see when the waters were, I think they were flash frozen or something. And that when they were frozen with the imprint of either the word or the vibration or the music or the emotion, how that affected how the crystals formed. And there was a major, I would say, I don't even know how to put it. That essentially
there was a restructuring of the water, and so the crystals, or this like snowflake-like crystals,
yes,
with negative intention, were just ugly and horrible looking, and the ones that with the positive were reorganized into these amazing, almost cathedral-like snowflake crystals. I don't know. I don't mean to speak for you. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, no, I thank you, because my brain just kind of was just like,
It's okay.
It's just astounding, really, when you see the myriad of different results and how accurate they were based on our personal intention and interpretation of what we would feel those specific words or feelings to be. Because when someone says something to you that's ugly or not aligned, you feel it in your body. You feel an energetic impact. And so what he showed through that is that when people were aligned, when they were, and there was such a massive difference, like you said, that when things were negative, they were gnarly, they were not coherent at all. And when they were empowering or beautiful phrases or uplifting or, passionate or whatever, or love filled, or like love and gratitude, I think was one that is very well known. It's kind of like the classic. It might've been the cover photo for his book, actually. And it's just perfect. It's like complete coherence, perfection. All of it is just organized so perfectly. And so you have to be able to see how that correlates with not just water crystals, but what are we made of? What are we made of? We are such a huge percentage, and people debate that percentage level, but whatever, we're still a huge percentage of water, and our blood and our plasma and all those things. How is that affecting the health and vitality of our body by our thoughts and feelings alone, not to mention the things that are coming out of our mouths? So please, yes, that's another aspect of this, is blessing your food. And I know that a lot of people are, if you're not really that spiritually inclined, if you don't live that kind of a life, it's okay. But even just thinking of adding energy to your food. So if you understand that chi is real, that we actually have energy moving through our body, and this is actually what animates us, because when you look down at the smallest particles past the atom, down to the cork, the smallest known particles and waves and particles of being, that it's vibrating energy. And that it's like 99.99 something percent space too. So yes, we're so quantum, we're so holographic, but we're constantly programming this field by how we interact with it. So taking that self-accountability and responsibility with our thoughts, our actions, our feelings, our words, and what we choose to interact with, what we choose to imbibe in. And so one of the things that I wanted to mention on the topic of GMOs, just to kind of back it up for 1 second, is for those of you that don't know a lot about like seeds and things like that, the heirloom seeds, if you can get heirloom, it's like one step better than organic, because heirloom seeds, for example, are one of the oldest models, right, that we can find of certain seeds or certain plants. So if you get the heirloom seed, you're looking at the most original form that we can get, at least on this planet in this day and age, of what that plant originally was before it was altered and, shifted around for, people's preferences. So if you can find that kind of a thing when you're growing food, or when you're buying food, that's going to really benefit you, because again, going back to those receptor sites, that's kind of what our body recognizes, is that original blueprint, and just because we live in a society that seems, civilized, and you go to the grocery store and everything is just packaged up nicely on a, in a plastic mock silver platter, right? It does not mean that it's actual food, right? So just
not at all. And sorry for interrupting again, but I go into the supermarket. I don't go down the aisles. There's no need to go down the aisles. None of it's food. Sometimes it's like being a stranger in a strange land, walking down these aisles, realizing none of it is food. It's all synthetic chemicals. And what is it doing? It's building a huge group of people who are then going to go to the medical industry for the pharmaceuticals and other toxic situation. I'm not trying to say you should or shouldn't take your medicine. That's not my point. But I myself only use plant-based medicines that are organic, well crafted. My body knows what to do with them. And I guess another example is just me getting over this cold in 3 days and not being sick for 5 years. Without any medical intervention. In fact, I think it's because I have no medical intervention. My body is able to recognize when I'm having symptoms, and I know what to do. And it's about what causes those symptoms. If I go to the doctor, sometimes I get an illness or something's bothering me. I think I should go to the doctor and think, why, Karen? Why? Because what he's going to do is treat the symptom, and you shut that symptom down and you have no idea what my body's trying to tell me. And so, sorry, I didn't mean to go on and on. I'll just end it there.
No, that's really important.
So much we can cover.
It's so important that people start becoming more in tune and aware, in tune with and aware of the core roots of issues that are showing up in the body, because like you just said, you highlighted something very important there. My body's trying to tell me something. It has a message for me. That is so crucial. And so honestly, a lot of what shows up in the body outside of environmental pollutants that we mentioned before is there's something going on a mental, emotional, or spiritual level that is creating some kind of lack of coherence. Some kind of disharmony has then taken place. And so our body goes into, a lot of times we experience fight, flight, or freeze. And this could be based on past trauma. It could be based on past life stuff. We don't even know. Like we don't necessarily know the root cause in the moment. But when we give our body the opportunity to start speaking to us and to listen, and here's another really important marker here, is to not become attached to the symptoms and labeling them. Yes. Because the moment that we start doing that, then, the molehill, right, that is the message, then becomes this mountain. And, then it spirals out of control, because once we identify with something, we start calling it my this, my that. We've adopted it. We've literally taken that thing that is this idea of this structured thing, which is in the field of the mind, which mind is everywhere, right? And the brain is in here. So we're like these antennas. And so if we take these conceptualized ideas and then we start identifying with them, we're actually digesting them. We're taking them on and in, and we're saying, this is mine. This is my thing. My fibromyalgia, my cancer, whatever it is, stop identifying with it. Even, I'm not saying ignore it. I'm not saying don't go through protocols that you feel guided to do. Do the things that you feel guided to do, but stop mentally identifying with them, because they can't begin to unravel and share their message until you're actually listening. And if your mind is so busy wrapped up in identifying, you'll never be quiet enough and have enough space in here to actually hear what your body is requesting of you, what your spirit is requesting of you. You may be asked to be like uprooted from your situation and brought into a new situation. We don't know, but you can't hear that and act on it if you're not listening. So I know, but it's related to nutrition. So I just figured, just bring that into the mix there. There's so much that we could talk about. I mean, gut health is another.
Oh, so important. And for mental health. And yet you go into mental health, see a mental health practitioner. They don't talk about your gut health. And there's a Coke and chip machine in the lobby. It's insanity. I'm sorry. Couldn't help. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, so a lot of things, and we were talking about inflammation. And so a lot of things that are happening due to inflammation because of what we're eating, whether it's the pesticides, whether it's sugar, whether it's grains, even organic grains, for example, you may be exposed to a certain amount of phytic acid, you may be exposed to a certain amount of lectins, which are all components of things like nuts, seeds, legumes, grains, things like that. It's not that those foods are necessarily bad for you, but there's a way that we've known. And one thing I'll encourage people to do is like, go to the indigenous elders in your area. Get to know them, talk to them about food preparation. What have they done traditionally for thousands of years? And when you talk to them about these things, oftentimes you'll see people have these tried and true methods of ways that they've prepared food or fermented food to prepare them for the most optimum absorption within the body. And so one of those things, like with nuts, seeds, legumes, grains, things in that kind of category, is that they will soak them. They'll soak them first.
Yes.
And when you do that,
to remove the enzyme inhibitors, I always soak my nuts, and then if I want them crispy and dry, I'd put them in the food dehydrator on low temperature. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt again. I'm just like, so much of what you're saying is yes. I'm all excited about it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's great. So when we do that, it really it releases the things that are more difficult for our bodies to process. So there's, less inflammation that's going to take place in the actual digestion process. There's also different things that are really helpful to know, like the acid alkaline balance within the body. And there's some people and some schools of thought will tell you alkaline all the way. And while I do believe that a more alkaline environment is going to be more beneficial because it makes it far more difficult for anything like, harmful pathogens to survive within the body, there is still an alkaline acid ratio that occurs within the body, and it actually goes through cycles. And so something that I've learned over the years is that, like, if you're wanting to eat a larger amount of protein, for example, you need a little bit more acidity in your body at that time. And so you want to actually eat those things, heavier proteins, if you're consuming animal products at all, or nuts, seeds, beans, things like that. You want to eat them preferably before 2:00 in the afternoon, because that's the time that your liver transitions into cleanup mode. So you want to give your body the opportunity. And the reason why that's important is because liver and gallbladder are responsible for bile production. And a lot of people they don't know anything about that. But Andreas Moritz, the man that I mentioned earlier, talks a lot about that in his books. So that's a great resource. I also have some other books here that are really great resources I can share shortly here. But so your liver health and gallbladder health are really essential to help break down your food. If you don't have enough bile production, you're not giving your food the opportunity to have all of the digestive enzymes and everything that you need to actually break down the food and properly assimilate them. And that ties in with gut health and all of that stuff. And so many people are dealing with leaky gut syndrome and things like that, where we've eaten these processed foods or grains and have created so much inflammation in the body, where the actual villi within the stomach that are built to assimilate all of our nutrition, they've just been worn down to nothing, to the point where we don't even hardly have them anymore. And then there's actually fissures that form within the gut. And when that happens, food, whatever it is that you're eating or consuming, and especially dangerous for those that are drinking alcohol and eating processed foods and stuff like that, is it's actually getting into the bloodstream. And so then when your body sees these foods getting into the bloodstream, this is when people start having food sensitivities, because the body goes, bad, bad, danger, danger. It's recognizing these things because it's like, why is this in the blood? This is not supposed to be here. So, you know, there's all these different reactions and things that can occur from, you know, introducing things into our body that are really not meant to be there. So, so gut health is really important to make sure that what you are putting into your body is actually of service to your body. And so there's ways that you can actually go about fortifying, healing the gut from the inside out, so that, you know, so that what you're taking into your body is then going to be assimilated properly, and you can actually build back those villi. Because, and if you ask me, you know, I'm a firm believer that everything can be healed. I don't care what it is. I believe everything, anything and everything can be healed. And that takes some mind work, and it takes that heart-brain coherence that we're talking about. And maybe we could devote an entire conversation to that at some point, because that's really, you know, like the gold right there. But, you know, so some of the resources for healing the gut are things like bone broth, things that are going to help you actually encourage your own body to produce its own collagen. So a lot of people talk about collagen supplements, and that's fine. You can go down that road if that supports you. And I would recommend taking large amounts of vitamin C, and even like normally just taking a good amount of vitamin C every day is just, it's integral in maintaining healthy immune function. So, and vitamin, you know, D3, K2, those two together are really helpful. Those are helpful for the entire immune system, but also like pretty much almost every function within the body. L-glutamine is another supplement that you can take, that a lot of people, athletes take it for like muscle rebuilding or kind of post-workout kind of stuff. It's a tissue builder, and it's a muscle rebuilder. So it actually helps, it will rebuild the lining of your gut. So if anybody's dealing with those kinds of things, that is a really great place to start. And also fasting. And so I know we're getting close to time here already.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear what you have to say about fasting. It's all good though. It's all good. Everything you've said is just fantastic and right on the money based on my experience. And you and I have never even met in a physical way. You know, we've just done some Zoom contact, and yet everything you're saying resonates 100% with me. So I'm glad, because now I know I'm on the right track. Go ahead.
Yeah, yay. Yeah, I'd love to share about fasting. I will say fasting has been incredibly transformational experience for me. And not only for my physical health, but for my spiritual health as well. So what I found is that things that have a really difficult time healing on the physical level within the body go into supersonic heal mode, like rapid healing mode, when you commit to fasting. And anyone that's interested in doing this, please, like, you know, if you have someone around you, like, you know, if you see a doctor or you see a nutritional counselor or dietitian or whatever, like if you have someone who can all the fasts that I've done, I've pretty much done solo personally, and that's just been my path. But to have some kind of support is definitely beneficial, just because it can be challenging if you've never done it before. But I don't want to program your subconscious too much to think that it's going to be challenging, because the benefit far outweighs, any kind of struggle or detriment. Because a lot of people, people will tell you, oh, if you don't have water for 3 days, you'll die. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true, because I've done dry fasts that lasted longer than 5 days. So, I'm not telling everybody to go jump into dry fasting, but what I'm saying is that fasting has a way of putting the body into autophagy. Okay. And so when the body goes into autophagy, it's like all of the organs that are normally tied up with digestion and cleaning house and moving things through and breaking down and assimilating and all their jobs can then take a breather. They can take a break and they can start working on healing. And so for me, when I first started doing it, I actually noticed, again, fasting, it was one of those major things that started changing things for me. Like all of my senses were heightened, because your body starts, you just go into heal mode so fast that your body, you recognize it. There were certain things in the house I could smell if my kids opened up a bottle of coconut water from across the house. I could smell it, and things that seem impossible. But I'm telling you also that it functions also on the glands of the body, which are so responsible, largely responsible for a lot of the spiritual experiences that we have. And I know your show, you focus on a lot of that stuff. And so I want to emphasize that for people, that it can be a method of fast tracking your experience to really, if you're really committed to that, to really start opening yourself in new ways. I was having out of body experiences more regularly when when I go into fasting. It's like your body, everything just kind of cleans up. Your vision, your psychic intuitive abilities, having those kinds of exchanges. If you're someone that is able to communicate with guides or angels or things like that, everything, the volume just gets so turned up, because you're cleaning house. You're cleaning house of your mind, because what do we do? We're spending most of our time and our energy during each and every day centered around what I'm going to eat next.
Yeah.
Then
there's
really,
the whole emotional component. I'm an emotional eater, and yet that's a good time to not eat and check out what's going on for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's almost like some forms of suffering that we inflict on ourselves, like fasting, is just the most amazing tool for us to really get in touch with our emotions, what's going on mentally, physically, spiritually. It just opens it all up. It's an amazing, amazing process.
Yeah, truly. I really can't, I don't have enough positive words to say about the process of fasting. And there's so much introspection that happens, especially in the first 3 days of a fast. And I'm not encouraging people, without experience, to do any kind of like dry fasting, because that's kind of next level. But if you're considering it, work your way into a fast by, if you're someone who eats animal products, eliminate that. Started eliminating grains, excuse me. Eliminate, and then start, I would, even with some people, I'm like, okay, we'll go into soups or pureeing certain things, or just salads, and then move into juice, and then go into water. So you're not just kind of freaking yourself out thinking, people, we have these mental and these emotional connections to food. And we think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if I'm not eating? And then if it's centered around some kind of gathering, it's like, well, they're going to be eating. And so there's this like emotional component, and so we realize in those first few days of not having that food intake, and keep drinking water, keep drinking. And there's other things that you can do too, like have trace minerals that you're taking, even a little bit of like Himalayan salt or something to keep your electrolytes up. Those things are really important as well, just to keep you kind of balanced. But once you get into the fast, you start uncovering these layers. And a lot of it is mental, but then you start to feel, once you've gotten past like day 1 and 2, you're like, I'm hungry. And then you move past that and you're like, I feel great. And then you just feel better and better. But, always use your intuition when you're taking steps like that, when you're going forward and doing something like a fast, because, it can challenge you in certain ways. And if your body's saying, okay, that's good for now, then just honor it. It can be a lot to go in with some kind of a mental goal, like I'm going to do a 21-day fast, and then you're breaking down, and then there's self-judgment, and you feel, so we don't want to go down that road. So just really honor your body with where you're at, intuitively follow the flow of where you're feeling called in that moment. But remember, it's easy to also get distracted too with like, what is the intuitive pull of what my body needs? And then what is a craving, right? Because the cravings actually subside pretty quickly. When you're doing a water fast, they subside within a couple of days, usually. Now, if you're primarily a coffee drinker, well, yeah, that might be, you're going to have a little fun with that. But so it's good to maybe get off of the caffeine first if you're going to do that. Some of the
worst withdrawal I ever had was when I used to drink coffee. Oh my God, did I get sick when I tried to go off it. So that's the other thing. We're coming close to the end, but I'm wondering if you can talk a bit about the healing crisis, because the healing crisis is an important part. And if we don't know what it is, we won't be expecting it. And I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So for those of you not familiar with that term, the healing crisis is something that can occur when your body is going through a pretty sufficient to major detoxification. Sometimes people might call that a Herxheimer reaction or something. It depends on what's actually physiologically going on with the body. But healing crises can look like the body's going through a healing, it's going through a detoxification, and maybe you're experiencing symptoms that are going along with that. And sometimes, like, I'm going to mention this man again, it seems like his material is just kind of present in the field today. But Andreas Moritz, he talked about that, the healing mechanism. And so sometimes when our body is experiencing something that we might see as a problem or as a symptom, it's actually the body's way of creating a little bit of inflammation to actually heal what's going on instead of healing. So if we can start to differentiate in our minds the difference between a symptom and a root cause, there is a difference. And sometimes that root cause can bring up symptoms within the body. But we need to really be attentive and listen for what the root cause is, so that when the symptoms come up, if they do, that we know how to handle them. And so, one of the tools that I would give to anybody embarking on this path, wanting to move forward, really cleaning up their diet, or doing any fasting or whatever the case is for you, what you feel called to do. If this is something that shows up for you, or if you're someone that does experience symptoms and your body is experiencing the healing crisis, check out, there's different names for this. So the whole time I've been talking about the heart-brain coherence or connection. And so the Heart Math Institute talks about heart-brain coherence. Joe Dispenza talks about this. Dr. Joe talks about this in his work. His work is also very crucial to everything that we're talking about, even though he doesn't necessarily focus on nutrition. He's talking about that heart-brain coherence, that heart-mind coherence. Some people refer to this as limbic system rewiring or brain retraining or different things like that. All of this is very important to know how to handle when the body goes into sympathetic nervous system responses, which would be, you might know that as fight, flight, or freeze, right? So those things might show up in the field, in the body. And that's, it could be triggered by anything. So there could be multiple triggers. It doesn't have to be food related. It doesn't even have to be detox related. But so whatever the symptom is, but I'm telling you this because sometimes that can show up in, Karen, what you're calling the healing crisis, that the body kind of goes into inflammation mode because it's in the process of healing something. So if we can get a handle on our thoughts and go, okay, what's showing up right now? And there's a process of actually taking our thoughts and redirecting them to how it is that we want to feel, what it is that we want to experience, putting our conscious awareness in the part of the body that we're experiencing that discomfort and actually sending it healing, sending it light, sending it love. And there's actually evidence now to show that our thoughts create not only frequency, but they create certain amounts of light, to include infrared light. And so something really powerful with that is that infrared light is known to decrease inflammation. And so there was a story that I heard from one of my teachers, John Stewart Reed. He's the inventor of the cymoscope. And he was talking about this today in his presentation, that there was someone, and I won't go into the whole story, but that he was in a very detrimental situation. And he started imagining gold light around his body. And I know that for a lot of people, that sounds really woo-woo, overly spiritual, over the top. And they're like, yeah. But what they were finding, he was actually keeping himself from experiencing much of the trauma, much of the damage to his actual physiological body, because of just imagining this golden light surrounding his body. So when you are using your faculties of visualization, of sending light and color to certain parts of your body, or sending healing, or sending unconditional love, and knowing that it's not just coming from you, but from that infinite supply that we all have access to, that you are actually inviting your cells to entrain with that. And so they sync up with that vibration, they sync up with that frequency, and they go, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But when a symptom shows up, we listen to that, we freak out because we're going, oh my God, this thing is happening in my body. Oh no, what's wrong? And then our thoughts just spiral into all the things that we think it could be. We start looking up symptoms on WebMD, we go on this whole crazy, spiral of events there. You need to remember that our body is always listening. Our cells are always listening. And that if there's nothing else that you take away from this is to, flood your body with goodness. And so that means whatever it is that you're putting into your body, be it nutrition, be it, healthy, high vibe living water, which ideally would be spring water, right? Because that's structured for us to receive, right? Those receptor sites, and our thoughts. So that's, that would be one of the biggest tools that I would give to people that are experiencing any symptom, whether it's, during the healing crisis or otherwise. Because when we start ruminating, or dwelling on our symptoms, we're actually making them bigger. And then because our body's listening, right? The cells are listening. So they're going, oh, okay, so we're supposed to continue to do this because our attention and focus is there. But when our attention and focus goes, I hear you. Thank you for letting me know that I need some love and attention here. I'm going to send you some love. I'm going to send you some light. I'm going to let Source take care of this right now. And when we do that, and when we physically take a minute to pause and to breathe and to redirect our thoughts to something that we actually want to create, our actual neurochemistry changes. And that's so important because when we're ruminating and we're dwelling on the problem, our brains are taking the same neural pathways over and over and over again habitually. And when they do that, they're secreting the same neurochemicals that are, most of the time, if we're in fight, flight, or freeze, those are responsible for a lot of damaging chemistry that is actually killing off cell growth. It's harming the brain, it's harming the body. We don't get a chance to clean up, and it's certainly not responsible for healing. And so in the switching over from, we're always constantly either regenerating or degenerating. And so we have the ability to choose, and what a gift that is, to say we are conscious co-creators. So we can either live on autopilot and let those symptoms kind of bring us into despair, or we can consciously, be in the command chair of our center, and then move our bodies in a different direction. And then those, you're building new neural pathways. The brain starts lighting up and firing. And then you're secreting healing chemistry in the form of endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and all of those chemicals are actually responsible for many different feel-good things in the body, but not just feeling good, but actually healthy cell growth, repair, healing the body. And so if we can just take that minute to pause and redirect, it's like we start catching our blind spots enough to actually, help us in the process of healing. And so I know that was a really long answer for what you were asking, but.
Oh, it's really, really good stuff. Really good stuff. Thank you for everything. I really appreciate you and your wealth of information and wisdom. I'm wondering if you want to just tell people, for those that are listening to the audio podcast, all the links will be in the description below, but could you just say your website and where people can find you for those listening to the audio version?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me on my website at divinealchemytemplearts.com. You can also find me on YouTube under Aurora Alchemy, which is ALKHEMY. And you can find me, if you're interested in connecting, on Facebook. I can be found through both Divine Alchemy Temple Arts, that's my business page, and my personal page is Aurora Isa, ISA Seraphine. So would love to hear from you all.
Wonderful, wonderful. So yeah, we're pretty much out of time. I want to thank you, Aurora, very much for being our guest today. And of course, we will be having you back soon, although the months fly by, but definitely we'll be having you back. And I want to thank all the viewers for joining us today. I really appreciate you. Without you, we wouldn't even have a show. And I wish you all much light and love in the upcoming week. And just wish you the very, very best. And we'll see you next week on the Quantum Guide Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels. Like this video and share it with your friends. You can also find the Quantum Guide Show and my other podcast called Aliens and Astrology on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network. That's www.forbiddenknowledge.news. And while you're at it, check out my website, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, where you will find some amazing products and services and an abundance of free resources to help you with your journey. All of the links are in the description below. And in the meantime, until we see you next week, keep up the good work.
Splendor and endlessness puts all my inner strife to rest. For time time gives birth to hurriedness. It all makes sense, well, more or less, and the sages put me to their test. With heart and soul I do my best to find the answers to my quest. I wonder and I must confess, I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's okay. If this is all an illusion,